Hey guys, my name is Alex and I want to welcome you to the first ever video on my cooking channel, Craft Cuisine. Today's video is dedicated to my good friend Clayton, who wants to know how to do a quick, easy stir fry using whatever he's got laying around in his fridge. So, let's get started. Alright, so welcome to my kitchen. This is my humble workspace right here. Rule number one with this, we want to have fun with this, right? So crack open a beer, put on some music, we're going to enjoy ourselves while we do this. Okay, so as you can see, everything's very organized here. Organization and cleanliness is absolutely key when you're working in the kitchen. I promise you it might feel like a little bit of extra work, but in the long run, it's going to make your cooking much better because it's just going to keep everything from getting chaotic on you. It's going to help you feel a little bit more in control of what's going on, which goes a very long way. Today we're doing a stir fry, and I know for a lot of you, Asian cooking probably seems like it might be really complicated and a little bit intimidating, but it's actually extremely simple. What I'm going to be doing here today is a very basic stir fry. You can incorporate just about any veggies or meat you want in it. You can do steak, you can do chicken, broccoli, carrots, onion, bok choy, green beans, peas, you name it, chances are you can throw in this recipe and it's going to work great. So, to start, we've got a few major components in our Asian cooking. Number one, soy sauce. Obviously, one of the number one things in cooking is properly seasoning your food. Most of the time you're using salt to do that, but in Asian cooking, we're going to be using soy sauce. Soy sauce has a ton of sodium in it. Chances are, if you're using it right, you're not going to have any salt as well. Another really important component in all cooking is incorporating acidity into your food. We do that in Asian cooking. Today, we're using rice wine for that. Rice wine vinegar, excuse me. Our oil, or our fat that we're going to be using today, because you always need to have a fat when you're cooking as well, it's going to be sesame oil. This here is a toasted sesame oil. As you can see, it's a much darker color. That's going to add a ton of flavor to your stir fry, as well as be the fat base to help you cook all of your veggies. And then finally, this one is not necessary, but it's very easy and I like it. I think it adds a lot to the cooking. I don't know if you're familiar with mirepoix in French cooking, which would be onion, celery, and carrot. It's the base for basically any French soup. Really just a ton of cooking. It's just a fantastic base. In Asian cooking, I kind of call this the Asian mirepoix. This is just fine minced garlic and shallot, equal parts, and I have it sitting in sesame oil. So, if you have these four things right here, chances are you can make yourself a delicious Asian style meal with whatever you have in your fridge. So we talked about these main components that we're going to be using in cooking. I incorporated those in a couple different ways for our dish today. First is I made a marinade for our chicken that we're going to be using as the protein. Really basic. It is just equal parts soy sauce and rice vinegar with a little bit of sesame oil. I put a little bit of that Asian mirepoix in there that we talked about, and then a little bit of brown sugar as well, just to kind of add a little bit of sweetness to it and help balance that acidity factor. Don't worry about the exact measurements. I'll go ahead and include those in the description below the video. The second way I incorporated is by making the sauce for our stir fry. So after we cook all of our veggies and our chicken, we're going to throw this sauce in there and reduce it until it thickens enough that it can coat our veggies and our meat. And we're going to throw the meat back in there and the veggies and then toss it, and that's going to be our finished product. And I'll show you that in a little bit. This guy, very similar to the marinade. It's going to have your soy sauce, rice wine vinegar. If you have some mirin wine as well, that works great in Asian cooking, but again, we're just keeping it simple today. I also have some, and this is the second piece in the cooking that uses those components we have in here. This is going to be our sauce. It's soy sauce, rice wine vinegar, a little bit of brown sugar, sesame oil, and then I also put a little bit of cornstarch in there. That's just gonna help that sauce thicken up as it reduces in the pan. That way it's gonna coat the veggies and the meat a lot better. All right, so let's get started. All right, so something that's really important, especially if you're a beginner when it comes to cooking, is that you want to have all of your ingredients prepped and ready to go before you begin cooking. That way you can just focus on the actual cooking process and just add things at the proper time. Again, this is a simple stir fry, so I only have a few ingredients. We have mushrooms here. These are going to be cremini. These are cremini mushrooms right here. We have bok choy and yellow onion. Those are the 3 veggies I'm going to use in this today. These are some veggies that you should probably, at least I almost always have some of this in the fridge, and they work great together. So, first step is we want to make sure that we get all our knife work done and everything is nice and organized in front of us. I've done most of the knife work already, but I wanted to also kind of show you how I do it. So let's get started with that. I can show you briefly each ingredient. With the mushroom, I've rinsed everything already. You always want to rinse all your veggies. The first thing I do with my mushroom here is remove the stem. You can do that just by kind of popping it to the side, and then just pull it right out. And I almost forgot. It's always good to have a little trash receptacle on your workspace. That way you're not moving in between the trash in your workspace. You're not dropping stuff on the floor. Every once in a while you can just take your bowl with all your trash and then throw everything away. So we got our mushroom here without stem. It's already rinsed. You want to place it bottom side down because that's a nice flat working space. For this, I chose to quarter the mushrooms just because I think it gives them a little bit more of a meaty feel, nice texture. It's one of 3 ingredients in this thing, so I'd like them to stand out pretty well. So, quartering the mushroom, pretty simple. 2 cuts. You have your quartered mushroom. Next is the bok choy. Now, when you're doing knife work, an important thing is you always want to try and have a flat space to work with on whatever you're cutting, because a flat space is going to be a stable space. So to do that with bok choy, you can do this with romaine, really any lettuce. Just kind of have it lengthways, like so. And you have a flat working space right there. So then you can lay it flat. And the thing with stir fry is that you want to have all your veggies be bite-sized. You want it to what we call eat well, where you don't have to use a knife to break any of it down. You can literally just take a fork, scoop it in your mouth. So once I have it halved, I'm just going to slice it into about 1/2 inch slices. I'm going to discard the stem. These little guys here at the end you can use though. These are absolutely delicious. They're going to add a nice little crunch in there. That's your bok choy though. Pretty simple, straightforward. I like to always wipe my knife off and my workspace after making a mess. Always keep things, just constantly wipe your workstation as you work. So next is the onion. There's a number of ways you can break down an onion. Today I'm going to show you how to slice an onion. Really quick and easy. You have your root end, and then you have the head of the onion right here. You always start by taking off the head, just by slicing. Just slice it right off like that. Then you have a flat space to work with, right? In this case, since we're slicing, we're actually taking both ends off. So after you take that head off, you're taking the root end off. And then we're going to halve our onion. Just like that. Now you can take it, I'm not going to use too much onion in this dish, I'm only going to do half. We can save this little guy for later, you can leave the shell on him. Just peel that outer piece off. And it's okay if you get like a little bit of edible onion peeled off too. You know, we're not trying to be too crazy about details here. So this is what you're going to be left with. Peeled, you're ready to go. You have a nice flat surface you're working with. Now we slice. And you can kind of break the onion apart. You should be left with these nice little slices in there. All right, so now that we have all of our veggies cut up and organized and ready to go, we call this our mise en place, our mise, if you will, just everything you need when you're cooking. We're gonna begin cooking. So step one, I have my chicken here in the Asian marinade that we talked about earlier. All I did, this is one breast. I just took it and sliced it into about half-inch thick slices of chicken pieces, and then I put it on this marinade. It's been sitting on this marinade for about, I'd say, an hour and a half, which is going to give it some nice flavor. You can actually have meat sit on this marinade up to 2 days though if you want to. It's going to take on a really nice flavor. Again, this marinade is really versatile. You can put pork, steak, or chicken on this and it's going to come out great. So I've got my pan heating up. Traditionally, when you're doing a stir fry, you do it in a wok on very high heat, just constantly stirring it just to make sure nothing burns. But you don't need a wok to do that. So today, just because I'm assuming most people have a skillet, such as this, your traditional non-stick skillet, I'm going to show you how to do stir fry now. Right now, I've got this heating up. We're going to let it get nice and hot. We're going to add our oil to it, and we're going to add our chicken. Okay, so our pan's been heating up now. You can tell when the oil's getting to be about as hot as you want it to, because as you move the pan, it should be much looser than it was when you first poured it in there. You don't need a lot of oil just because this marinade has oil in it, so the chicken's already got a little bit of fat on it. Shouldn't stick too bad. So, once we're nice and hot, I have this guy at about a 7 right now. We're gonna add our chicken. You want to make sure your chicken is spread out nicely. That way it's all getting cooked evenly. And you can hear that sound too. If you're not getting that sound when you add your food to the pan, that means your pan's not hot enough. You want to make sure that your pan's nice and hot. That sizzle is really important. So we got our chicken laid out evenly. We're going to let it cook for a bit. You want to make sure that each side gets a nice sear on it. That sear is going to help caramelize the marinade and add a lot of flavor to the chicken. Ready? All right, so chicken's been sitting on here for about, I'd say 3 to 4 minutes right now at a 7. You can see from the sizzle, the pan's super hot. We're about ready to flip this chicken. You can tell just by the way the color is coming up the sides there. You can see the white is almost to the top of the chicken. It's time to flip. Alright, so I cooked the chicken. It's been on the second side now for about 3 to 4 minutes. Looks to me like it's about done. There's a couple ways you can tell with chicken if it's done. If you really want to be safe, you can use an instant read thermometer. With chicken, you're looking for an internal temperature of 165. So, you can take your chicken, put that sucker in there, and there you go, 166. Boom, we're done. We can pull this chicken off. The little thin strips like this is also easy. You can just take a piece out, open it up. You can see how it's all nice and white inside. There's no pink. Your chicken is done. We don't want to keep cooking it too long, otherwise it's going to start drying out. So, over here, where I put the chicken on a paper towel. I love these sheet trays. Have great multiple uses. You can see this is what I use to keep all of my mise en place organized. It just kind of really helps keep things consolidated and organized. Now that our chicken is done cooking, we're going to start cooking our veggies. You always want to think about, just because you can throw whatever you want in a stir fry, you want to think about when you're cooking your veggies, what's going to cook the fastest, what's going to take the longest to cook. In this case, our mushrooms are the sturdiest. They're going to take the longest to cook. The bok choy doesn't take much time at all. So we want to add a little more fat to the pan. Don't worry about all that extra residue in there. That's all flavor that when we add the sauce, it's going to deglaze the pan, and it's going to add a lot of flavor to that sauce. So we want to keep that in there right now. That's good stuff. So I'm going to add a little bit more sesame oil. You want to go about a tablespoon or so of oil, just enough to really coat the pan. Make sure it's nice and hot, which clearly it is. You see the oil shimmering, bubbling a little bit, definitely ready. Add your mushrooms. Mushrooms, I like to kind of toss them around, get them coated in that oil. See right here, I didn't add enough oil, you can tell because the pan is already totally dry, so let's add a little bit more. Oils tend to really want, mushrooms tend to really like soaking up whatever fat you add to the pan, so sometimes they need more fat than your average veggie. Once you have a nice coating of oil on your mushrooms, we're just going to let them sit and we're going to let them sear. Similar to the chicken, it's probably going to be at about 3 to 4 minutes. What we're really looking for is some nice color on the side of the mushroom that is touching the pan right now. Alright, so as you can see, we have great color on these mushrooms now. That means it's time to add our bok choy, and I'm also going to throw in a little bit of that Asian mirepoix just to add a little extra flair, a little extra flavor to it. So the mirepoix, you really don't need much of this stuff. I'm going to do probably about a teaspoon right here. Just throw that in. We're going to toss that around in with the mushrooms. And you don't have to know how to flip the pan. You can just use a spatula to mix things around really easily as well, like so. And right now what we're trying to do, I added that mirepoix in first because I want to give that garlic and that ginger a chance to kind of bloom. You'll really notice it on the nose. You're going to start to smell it after about 10 to 15 seconds. That smell is really going to come through. It's a wonderful, super sexy smell. As soon as you smell that, it means that stuff's activated, that flavor is starting to come out. We want to add a little bit more fat to the pan because as you can see the mushrooms have soaked up most of it. We don't want to burn our bok choy. Now we're going to add our bok choy. As with just about any leafy green, bok choy is going to cook pretty quickly. What we're looking for here is for the leaves to start melting, or excuse me, wilting. They're going to start taking on that fat a little bit. Just want to toss them around just to get coated in the mirepoix, take on that sesame oil. We're just going to let this roast for a little while. Probably about, I'd say, 3 or 4 minutes. It's not going to take long. Alright, so as you can see, our bok choy has wilted. The leafy greens have lost a lot of their body, and they've kind of shriveled up, but they're not just totally melted. You know, they still have a little bit of texture to them. And then with your stems in there, they still have some structure that definitely softened. They've started to become see-through a little bit. That's how you know when that's really getting to where you want it to go. So, now that these veggies are probably about 90% of the way cooked, we're going to remove them from the pan, and we're going to start reducing our sauce. The reason we cook the chicken and the veggies separate from the sauce to start is just because they all cook at different rates, and this is a much easier way to avoid overcooking our chicken, which would dry it out, overcooking the veggies, which would just turn it into a textureless mush. Pretty simple, straightforward. So I set it over here on the side. I always like to put it on a paper towel. That's going to help soak up excess liquids and keep your veggies from becoming soggy, basically. All right, so start doing the sauce. I'm going to start with a nice base of the mirepoix, again, probably about a teaspoon on there. Just going to put that in the pan. I'm going to add a little bit of extra oil just to keep it from burning. And again, this is a very quick process right here. Ginger and garlic is very delicate. It's very easy to burn if you're not paying attention. So you just want to make sure that you keep your pan moving, keep stirring it up. You can see It's already changing color. It cooks very quickly. Luckily, I did all my meats ahead of time, so all I have to do now is add the sauce. So my sauce here, I'm going to shake it up because the cornstarch likes to sit at the bottom. So you definitely want to shake it up to make sure that's mixed in there nicely. We're going to pour it in there. It's a nice hot pan. And then you want to start scraping up the pan. You want to make sure you get any bits that are stuck to the bottom of the pan. When you add this liquid to it, that's going to create a process called deglazing, where just because of the temperature difference, you're pulling up everything that's stuck to that pan. Now that's going to be incorporated in the sauce. As you can see, it's bubbling up very quickly, and it's going to start thickening. So now we just want to keep stirring to make sure that our sauce doesn't burn. And we're looking for it to get some consistency where I can run the spatula through it, and it's going to just hold a trail. You see right now it's starting to do that. It's not there quite yet. If you have high heat, it's a pretty quick process, but again, you really want to make sure you keep stirring it, otherwise you're going to start searing it, and that's just going to ruin your flavor. Alright, so it's probably been about 4 or 5 minutes. I've just been continuously stirring this, keeping a close eye on it. Just keep running the spatula through so you can kind of see the texture, the consistency of it. As you can see, it's much thicker now. I run my spatula through and that path holds for quite a while. You can also tell, you take a spoon, coat the back of the spoon, you can run your finger through and it's going to hold that trail there. So final step, I have all of my cooked veggies and chicken. We're going to add that back into the sauce. We're going to toss it in the sauce. We're just going to toss it for probably 1 to 2 minutes, make sure it gets a nice coating on everything, make sure that those veggies and that chicken gets hot again. Once everything's hot, nicely coated in your sauce, you can go ahead and just turn your burner off, take it off the heat. We're ready to start plating.
Go.
All right, so now we're plating. On the side, I cooked off some rice in my trusty rice cooker. If you don't have a rice cooker, I highly recommend you get one. Rice is one of the cheapest, most versatile foods out there, and having a rice cooker makes it just so easy to cook. And it goes great with a stir fry. So let's plate. Good, nice healthy topping on top. Now, let's say you're making this for someone special, girlfriend, boyfriend, you know, trying to make your parents proud, something like that. Now a little bit of flair at the end, it also helps with flavor, but just a nice garnish. I have some green onion here that I sliced ahead of time. Sprinkle a little bit of that on top. Green onion is absolutely one of my favorite garnishes when it comes to Asian cooking. It just adds a really nice kind of fresh, bright flavor to whatever dish you're making, and it pairs really well with the soy sauce and the acidity of the vinegar, as well as the sweetness of brown sugar, or I mean, really, you could do maple syrup, brown sugar. That's a whole other thing. We'll get into that some other time. So, classic Asian garnish: green onion, sesame seeds. Have it. Quick, easy, versatile Asian stir fry. All right, so that is my first ever cooking video. I just want to thank all my viewers so much for taking the time to watch this. I really hope you learned something from it. That's my whole goal with this whole series. I absolutely love cooking. It's something that's brought me happiness through my whole life, and I figure everyone loves food to some degree. So it's a skill that if you can learn it, you can share it with everyone you know and you can make them happy. Hopefully I was able to help you out with that a little bit today. And again, thanks for tuning in. Please, any questions, comments, concerns, advice, and also I really want to work with my community on this series. So if there is anything at all that you are curious about in the culinary world, please post in the comments, and I will do my very best to touch base on it in a new video. Thanks so much, guys.